Hello, Tungsten Miner here. Today I'm going to be working on a Let's Play video for storage. So you can see arranged behind me what I've got right now for a storage system. This is almost entirely storage drawers. I've got some crafting stations in the floor here, but pretty much everything you're looking at is storage drawers one way or another. And it's super handy for early game when all you need is wood and you wind up collecting a little bit of storage over time. But I've collected and I've collected some more, and it's now gotten to the point where this is getting ridiculous. So my intention is to dive into refined storage today in this video and get myself up and running with at least a basic system. And then, maybe I'll extend on it from there. But to give you an idea of the full extent of the problem, let me switch my camera around. So you can obviously see all of this here. What you didn't see in that picture is my storage room. So here are a whole line of chests containing a whole lot of stuff. Now, to be fair, a lot of it is just boxes full of cobblestone and dirt that I've made with my various mines. But as you start walking past, you start getting into boxes full of little odds and ends and knickknacks and some seeds over here and different kinds of stone blocks that I've created. Go to the next row, we've got more different kinds of stone, some tools, plants of various kinds, animal drops of one sort or another, just lots and lots of different little pieces. And of course, a ton of cobblestone. So I may decide just to ditch most of this cobblestone and most of the dirt, although I'll definitely want to keep a lot of it around because it is handy to have. But between this room and the other room, that pretty much encompasses all of the storage stuff that I have. Over here is the last little bit where I managed to collect some barrels of lava while I was actually pumping oil. Some lava pool got mixed in with the oil pool. Somehow they didn't burst into flame, which was kind of nice. But I wound up with lots of barrels of lava, which is actually handy for making obsidian, so I keep it around. So anyway, those are my two rooms dedicated to storage now. And what I want to replace this with is going to basically all fit like in half of this half of the room. A couple of disk drives, a controller, some crafting stations, and so forth. And I should be pretty well set up to store everything you see here plus a bunch more. The one thing I'm a little worried about, any refined storage system requires a constant supply of power to stay powered on. And right now, the only power that I have comes from my power plant. So let's take a peek over here so we can see what we're talking about. Okay, so I currently have for a power plant a bunch of combustion engines. I've got one steam engine, which I use for burning up extra sticks and things. I've got an energy cell to store power, which I should upgrade because now I've got the materials for it. And I've got this reactor, which actually I overfilled, so bad on me, wasting fuel. And that's kind of what I've got at the moment. So I don't have anything that's a renewable source of power. I only have these things that burn up fuel. Which means, of course, if I have a refined storage system going all the time, I may well come back to my base one day and find that I can't actually open the system because I've run out of juice and there's nothing powering it. So along the way, I'm probably going to have to think about some kind of renewable source of power, if only to provide power to the refined storage system. Fortunately, I've got a bunch of good options, and I should be able to come up with at least one that works pretty well for me. So for now, I think what I'm going to do is pause the video, and I'm going to go off and get started on the crafting of some of the basic items that I'll need to get my refined storage system up and running. Talk to you in just a bit. Okay, so I've done a little bit of thinking about what exactly I need here, and I don't have all the parts I need. And as I was starting to do the planning, I thought it might actually be interesting for you to see what is involved in that. So let's take a look at what I need to build here. So the first thing I'm going to need is a controller. That's the core, the center of all of this stuff. So in order to make that, I'm going to need some quartz-enriched iron, which is really just iron and quartz. I've got quartz, I've got iron, great, no problem. The other thing I need is silicon ingots. And the only way to get these things, and apart from silly recipes like this, which are just moving around different pieces of them, is really this electric arc furnace. And you take one piece of sand, power it with 1 RF per tick, so not terribly expensive, but here's the problem. To get even a single ingot, and Ineo only makes one at a time, you need to wait 600 seconds. Now, fortunately for me, I have actually already made a whole bunch of these ingots, because I kind of knew, because I put the mod pack together, that this was going to be the only way to get chips of all kinds for all the different mods that use them. So I knew I would want this. So as soon as I could, I built that big arc furnace and I just tossed in 4 stacks of sand. So I'm actually pretty well set up for these silicon bars, which is good because I'm going to need a lot of them. Machine casing, just more quartz around a block of stone. And then finally, this advanced processor was just a smelted version of the raw advanced processor, which is itself this little recipe here on a crafting table. So this processor binding stuff is pretty straightforward. I've got lots of all of that, no problem. Diamonds might become an issue. I've only got like a quarter of a stack, so I might have to go on a trip to find some of those. Redstone also I'm kind of running low on. I've been making lots of devices, and I've used up most of what I had, so I might have to go get some more of that. And then these silicon wafers use some more of the advanced rocketry machines. So to get 4 of these, you need 1 silicon boule, which you get in the crystallizer from a silicon ingot and a silicon nugget. And I have no silicon boules, and I have exactly 1 wafer left. So the first thing I'm going to do is grab 9 of those and 9 of those and head off to my factory room and get these things started in the crystallizer. And I figured I may as well show you how this thing works. Okay, so this is one of the advanced rocketry machines called the Crystallizer. It's good for making crystals and not a whole lot else, to be honest. So if we say, look at this guy and this guy, this guy, and this guy, this guy, look at all the recipes for the Crystallizer. This is it. These are all of the recipes. That's all this machine is good for. However, silicon wafers are super important. You use them for a ton of different things. So it's totally worthwhile to make this machine, or you're not going to get very far in Astra. Likewise, this is the only way to get yourself dilithium crystals. And these are positively essential for any of the warp drive capable stuff that comes later in the mod pack. So you got to make one of these. Fortunately, I already did. So I've got an output hatch over here. I've got an input hatch over here. I'm going to toss these things in here and turn the machine on, and it starts doing its crystallizing thing. And as it does this, it will dump all of the outputs into this output hatch over here. And as soon as that empties out, we've got 1 silicon boule. The uses of this thing are few, namely 1. So I might as well take this thing right over to my cutting machine. That guy's already turned on, and toss it in here. And you can see it's going to run itself across and chop my boule into 4 silicon wafers, which come to the output hatch over here. And in the meantime, this guy's been going along doing its thing. I've got another one. So I'm going to be over here for a little while, tossing these things back and forth. I obviously could run some pipes around, but I find that I use these often enough for different combinations of things that I find it's easier, frankly, just to leave them not connected and just manually move things back and forth as I need to in batches. So that's going to get me those. Let's walk through the rest of what I need to do with this. So we've looked up the recipe here. This is an advanced processor, obviously requiring a diamond, but there's a couple of other recipes that this stuff gets used for. And in fact, we're going to need a bunch of all of these different kinds of processors that come from refined storage. And as you can see when I hover over this, this is a recipe by Craftweaker. So these recipes are particular to this mod pack. And they're all pretty much the same recipe. They just use iron, gold, and diamond to create the different chips. Because as I look further into what I'm going to need to build, I'm going to want a crafting grid, I think. Pretty sure that's what I want. This allows me to click on it and it will give me a crafting grid-like interface, except it'll be connected to the full extent of the storage that I have. And so I'm going to need a construction core, which is a basic processor and glowstone, a destruction core, which is the same with nether quartz, and a couple of improved processors and some other standard ingredients. So that's the second item I'm going to make, my controller plus my grid. And then I'm going to want to build... A lot of these things are handy, but not necessary early on. I'm going to want to build a disk drive, so another advanced processor, some quartz, machine casing. This gives me a block where I can put individual disks, and it's the disks that do the storing, but this is the place where you put them and connect them into the system. So as I kind of look through the rest of these, like, no, I will get to wanting these sooner or later, but not initially. But what I do want are these storage disks. And I think what I will do is jump to making a single one of the largest sort straight off. Not actually necessary, you'll see as we start looking at the recipes. So the disk is really just a storage housing plus the storage part. So really it's the storage part that you care about. These storage housings are pretty cheap to make. But making the storage part, you're going to need a bunch of advanced processors and then the 16K storage part. So 3 of them together, plus this extra stuff, gets you kind of an extra quarter of capacity. But making these things is pretty much the same recipe, just with less sophisticated parts. Same recipe again with less sophisticated parts. Same, well, not quite the same recipe, almost the same recipe. So you wind up building a lot of these things, right? So if we go up and count, in order to make one of these 64K parts, we've got 3 of these. We got 3 of these, which each need 3 of these. So 3 times 3 is 9, times 3 again is 27, times nothing again. So 27 of these will be necessary to get ourselves all the way up to the 64K part, which means I need 4 times 27 of these and 3 times 27 of these. So a lot of resources. I'm going to get busy collecting all this stuff, and I will be right back with you. Okay, I have been busy. So I went through all of the recipes that we looked at before and got all my materials together. Fortunately, I didn't have to make any trips for anything missing, and constructed these 3 machines. So this is my controller, and it tells me how much power I've got and what other machines it can find. So obviously, the controller needs to know what other machines are connected to its little network. And you can do that either by just having them immediately adjacent, or there's actually a refined storage cable that you can use to connect distant pieces of the whole apparatus together. So in the end, it winds up forming something like a multi-block storage system. So here it's telling me which blocks can it actually identify. And sure enough, it's got the 2 that I actually care about, the disk drive and the crafting grid. And it's telling me I'm using 4 RF per tick. It says FE, it has its own internal system, but they're 1-to-1 in this mod pack. And then 1 for this, and then 1 for the controller, and that's kind of it. If we look at the disk drive, I've got the 1 disk that I made, and you remember this is the recipe that kind of stacks and stacks and stacks and stacks. So I made a lot of different things to make that work. There are a whole bunch of options that I can use for saying which things get sorted into which of the cards, and there's prioritization as to which ones go where. I'm not really concerned about any of that at the moment, so I'm just going to kind of more or less ignore it. This is telling me how full my storage system is as a whole, which is obviously not at all because I haven't put anything in yet. And then finally, this is my crafting grid. So it contains all of the items that I've placed in storage. And I'm just going to dump my inventory in here right now because I took out all of the compacting drawers that I had back here, so I'd have a place to set this thing up initially. Now, obviously, I've got some work to do to take all of this stuff out and get it all in here. And then, well, I'm probably not going to want to leave this in the middle of the room, and I'm probably not going to want to power it from just an energy cell sitting behind it. So there's a bit more to do to get things going. So I'm going to get started on unloading all of this stuff and clearing it out. And then I'll be back once I've got all of everything into my storage system. Just a brief pause in my cleaning things up here to note an interesting bug I've run across in storage drawers. So you can see I've got a button down here which locks the contents of the drawers. which just means you can't, even when you pull the last item out, it doesn't forget what was in that drawer. Actually really super handy, but get into that another time. Needless to say, as I was pulling things apart, I wanted to know when I had fully removed all of the things from a drawer so I could tell when I wanted to move on or if I'd missed something. So I clicked this button and I unlocked all of the drawers. And you can see the locks all just went away here. It also emits a redstone signal, which is why the door keeps flopping open. But anyway, no more locks, which means it should be the case that all of these things come away. So if I, for example, grab some dilithium crystals here, and I toss them into a drawer, and I pull them out, fine, okay. And if I pull the rest of them out, now there's no longer an item there. If I toss it in here when everything is locked and pull everything out, it's got 0. But now, if I unlock it, it stays 0, and I can't change it. But if I toss those in there and pull them out, it becomes empty again. So curious little snafu there. Anyway, I've only cleaned out the contents of this room. I now need to go tackle that room over there and get everything out of those chests. So I will be right back. Okay, back again. I have emptied out all of the items from my storage drawers. And I decided to, instead of just to discard all of the extra stuff I had here, is to just make this kind of bulk storage for everything else. And indeed, I may actually tighten up this room a bit and move a lot of the chests into a more close formation. Because before I was using this as overflow storage for things that weren't directly involved in crafting. But now this is really just bulk storage because all of the things are going to be in that system, whether they're used for crafting or not, so long as there's not too many of them. So this may wind up being better organized in a different way, but I didn't want to fuss with that right now. So all I wound up doing is consolidating all the cobblestone together and up through here, and then making individual chests for loosely grouped kinds of things. So all the extra netherrack, the last little bits of the cobblestone, extra sand, gravel, and so forth, all the way up to the front. And I've got a couple of extra chests here and a few extra chests here, which I'll probably move over there eventually. Which means I now have pretty much everything in this system. You can see I've made one addition. This is a switch from the Redstone Switches and Gauges mod. I just love the look of these things. Which allows me to basically just turn this whole system off to preserve power. And you can see all the time that I've been working on things, it really didn't use a ton of power. So if I turn it off when I'm leaving for the day, as it were, I won't really have it running down my power too much. Now, of course, I will want a renewable power source, a solar array on the roof or something, so that I can just keep this going all the time, whether I'm here or not. But this will actually work pretty well for the time being. So I flip this on, and the redstone signal goes into this guy. I have it in redstone mode where it's only working with a redstone signal. That turns itself on. It then starts to discover all of the other pieces and eventually turns all them on, so that my system is now up and running and fully functional, ready to go. One thing I have decided to do is to take out anything more than 1,000 of a given item from this system, because it is limited in its space. It's quite large, quite a lot larger than what I had in its place before, especially when you consider the density of blocks required. But it does get ridiculous eventually to keep storing all of the cobblestone in the world. That's what the bulk storage is for. So the next step is I'm going to tear out all of these shelves, probably drop them right in here. And then I'm going to do a little bit of thinking about, one, how do I want to route power to this thing? Because now I need to. Obviously, I've got power not too far away, so this is not like a huge project. But I do want to think about exactly how I want to go about this, because I also have this power going up through here and over there and powering some rooms across all the way up there. So this might be a good time to rethink exactly how I do the power routing for these more forward rooms in the house. The other thing I was thinking of doing is, this is a leadstone flux duct. It is the worst kind of duct, which means it does not transmit power very quickly. And if I head up to the armory, we can see I've got my energetic infuser up here. And this is for recharging my armor and tools. When I only had a few tools that didn't use a lot of power, that was one thing. But since I've made my flux-infused jet plate, this thing stores 10 million RF. That's a lot of power, and it takes a long, long time to charge it over a leadstone flux duct. So yeah, it may be time to upgrade that thing as well. And this is probably as good an opportunity to do that as I'm likely to find. So I may also choose to change how the power is routed upstairs. So I'm gonna hit pause on the video, go do some work, and I'll be right back. Okay, back again, and I think I'm pretty much done for now. So, we've gone from all of those cabinets to just this. Quite a change. And in fact, not only is this containing everything that we saw in here before, but it has everything that I took from all the chests in here. So, what this finally winds up looking like is I now have all of these items listed here, which I can get at any point that I want to. So if, for example, I wanted to make one of these basic circuits here, well, that's not a good example. Here, let's get this one. So if I wanted to make an activator track, I can say move items, and I don't have any redstone torches, so that didn't work. All right, well, let's grab this. We'll drop 8 of those and some sticks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of those. Oops, one more. And then I'll just make all of these. Oh, well, I got a lot more than I wanted. Oh well. Right, so now if I want to make an activator track, recipe, I can just click move items and it will move in the items that I have. If I want to then look at making the rest of these things, I can see, oh, okay, I can craft these, so I can move items and I can craft that. And I can keep doing this as long as I've got the ingredients. So this will be a huge improvement to my production abilities here. It is powered, and the real big change that I had to make was in how that works. So the first thing you probably didn't notice is that these are now hardened flux ducts instead of leadstone flux ducts, carrying more power. There used to be a big conduit in this corner, which is now actually in the wall of the corner itself. And all of the routing is down here. So I've rearranged this bottom room. If you've been watching these Let's Play videos, you'll notice that this is a little bit different. So here I've got hardened flux duct that takes me all the way up to the controller. So this is fully powered. And this is hardened flux duct, and it connects with a resonant flux duct, which conducts a lot more power. So I've kind of made the main trunk of power out of this more expensive, a lot more expensive, duct, and then I used hardened ducts, which are a lot cheaper to make, for the little branches that are kind of off at the ends of the system. So this branch comes over to the various machines that are on this side of the workroom, and then this one's the branch for the machines on the other side of the workroom. This resonant flux duct then goes up through the wall itself and connects all the way up to the top level, so we'll go up there in a bit. And it connects back, so here we've got another machine. This is the fuel room, so this is all the stuff to make fuelium up there. Goes back and back and back, and eventually connects with my main power storage, this big energy cell here. And then resonant ducts going off in this direction, which connect with all of the machines in the factory room. And then I still need to install power going off in this direction to reconnect the machine that makes fuel from hydrogen and oxygen and all of the launch pad equipment. But that's a matter of getting more hardened ducts and kind of routing them off in that direction. I also took the opportunity to straighten out these tunnels. They're all kind of jagged and kind of connecting. I'd been building them as I was going along and didn't really have a specific plan in mind. Just as I needed to route some conduits, I made some tunnels. And now that I do have a specific plan in mind, or at least more of one, I've changed that around as well. Okay, so back upstairs then. We go up here, close that, and let's just go straight up to the hallway upstairs. Okay, so we can see down here, this is where all those machines were in the workroom. So that corner over there actually kind of comes up inside this post behind this wall. So right behind this wall is where that comes in. So the duct branches out underneath here. It branches out again to go connect with this guy here, and then continues under the floor off into the next room. And in the next room is where we have this energetic infuser. So there's actually resonant flux duct under the floor all the way up to this thing, so that when I go to charge my very, very expensive armor, it can actually draw power at the maximum possible rate, 25,000 RF per tick from storage. Okay, so that gets me that. And then over here, we've got the same duct going up to here, and it switches from resonant, where it makes the corner and heads off toward the armory, to hardened here. And I replaced all of the leadstone with hardened. So actually in this little box here is really a hardened flux duct with covers on top of it. Same thing goes up here and then around, and then connects up with the observatory just right up there in the ceiling. And I've used the same color ducts, or the same color covers rather, to cover everything up so that you really can't see that there's power ducts in the walls here at all. And that kind of gets me all of the new ductwork, which is really kind of the last bit of work that I had to do. And of course, I didn't have to do quite so much work as all that just to get one power line over here. But it seemed like a worthwhile thing to do now that I was, one, more well set up, and I've got lots of ender pearls, and I can start making the resonant equipment. And two, to just reorganize things a little bit, to streamline things, because I was switching over to the more expensive ductwork. If I have more of a straight shot, then I need fewer of those expensive pieces. So finally, I've got my the beginnings of my refined storage setup here. And it replaces a whole huge amount of stuff. It gives me a lot more room to grow into this workroom. In fact, I'll probably be able to bring in a lot of these other kind of one-off work tables in here, because now I have so much more room to play with. So that's it for my Let's Play of shaping up my storage room workshop into refined storage. Talk to you later.